Welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are talking about on Monday, the 21st of November. I am Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Friedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens. I'm back. I'm so excited. I listened last week, yelling.
Did you miss us?
I did. I missed you so
She
much.
hates
I had
listening
so
when
many
she's not
thoughts
on
and
it, 'cause
opinions, and I just wanted to yell and get involved. So I know what it's like to be an out louder.
A comedian has just shredded 10,000 English pounds because of David Beckham.
It's a waste of money at a time of a recession.
It really is. If you're confused, you're not alone. Last night, the World Cup started. Now, I mean the Soccer World Cup, but because I'm originally British, it's actually in my citizenship declaration that I can't call it the Soccer World Cup. It's called the World Cup. Because in England, we only have one World Cup. It's the soccer one.
And you call it football,
We
don't
call
you?
it football, not soccer. So the World Cup started. It's the only World Cup that matters. And traditionally, you know, lots of immigrants who live in Australia, we get up early, we stay up late, you watch the World Cup. It's part of
People
the
come
whole
to
thing.
work grumpy.
Everybody comes
They've
to
been
work
up since
grumpy.
2
How
a.m.
long does it go for?
Time difference is always bad. A few weeks, couple of weeks, kind of Olympic.
Okay,
you know.
so it's like the Olympics.
Yeah, it's like the Olympics for football. Yeah. And this year, all those early mornings come with a side of major ethical dilemma. Because the World Cup is being held in Qatar. And I'm sure many people know this, but just, you know, to kind of give a bit of context to why so much drama, which is a small Arab country who won the bid to host it back in 2010. Now, them winning was quite controversial because Qatar are not really known as a big footballing nation, but it wouldn't be the first time that a nation that isn't massive on football won the World Cup.
It's also known as mostly a desert, right?
It is mostly a desert. It's very hot. They've changed the timing of the World Cup. The World Cup is usually played. I know this is like detail that
No,
we
I'm
all start
interested.
glazing over in a minute. It's usually played in the European and the Northern Hemisphere's summer, because that's the time that the normal leagues don't play. So it's normally in like
middle of the year.
June, July.
August, September, June, July, around then. But because Qatar is hotter than the surface of the sun at that time of year, they've moved it to November. So in the first place, that caused a lot of problems. There are lots of leagues have had to be adjusted around the world to make it so that footballers can travel to it. So from the get-go, it was like, interesting choice.
They also had no stadiums.
No,
They had no infrastructure.
And what followed since that was a whole lot of infrastructure building. And in Qatar, not only in Qatar, obviously, but in Qatar, that work is predominantly done by an immigrant workforce, mostly from places like India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. And since 2010, more than 6,500 of them have died working in Qatar. Now, only 37 of those have been directly linked to the building of the stadium, but it's thought that the true numbers are far, far higher because the vast majority of the work that's been done there has been about building
Is that by
stadiums,
government
hotels.
reports?
Yeah.
Only 37.
Also, and importantly, in Qatar, it is illegal to be gay. Male homosexuality is punishable by prison sentence of up to 3 years. Obviously, same-sex marriage is illegal, and it's not illegal to discriminate on the basis of sexuality. All of this brings us to David Beckham.
How are women treated?
Not
in
great.
Qatar?
Remember like 2 years ago, there were those news headlines that suddenly women could get a license without first asking permission from a male guardian? So that was 2 years ago in Qatar.
Oh.
But the women will not be playing any football at this World Cup.
No,
That is going to
that's
be
quite
held at
awkward.
a
Yeah.
separate time. This brings us to David Beckham. David Beckham is a paid ambassador for FIFA, so the world footballing people.
And are they the ones that chose?
Yeah, FIFA gets
Qatar.
in the same way that the International Olympic Committee makes the decisions about where the Olympics goes, and that's often quite a controversial decision too. There's always lots of mutterings about backhanders and money.
And the committee, which had all these people on it, the people who voted for Qatar, it was later found that there was a lot of corruption involved and a lot of people have lost their jobs. So last time, I think 2018 was Russia and then Qatar, and it's been really weird. A lot of corruption. It should never, everyone agrees, this should never have been played in Qatar.
Right.
It is a terrible idea.
But here we are. Now, David Beckham is an ambassador. It's rumoured that his ambassadorship with FIFA totals around $200 million, right, over the course of time.
It's a good job to have.
I know. But a particular British comedian called Joe Lycett the £10 million that David Beckham will directly be paid, or is thought to be the portion of that that's roughly, linked to the World Cup itself.
For 2 weeks' work, not bad.
Yeah.
For a couple of weeks' work.
Also a great job.
So Joe Lycett, this comedian, who said that he would donate, if David Beckham, he had a big pile of cash in his videos, and he said, if David Beckham will pull out of the Football World Cup in Qatar, I will donate all this £10,000 to LGBTQI charities, and if he will not, I will shred it all right here, right now.
That's such a dick move. Like an attention-grabbing dick move.
Well, and indeed, the football kicked off last night. David Beckham was there. And indeed, Joe Lycett appeared to wear a rainbow tutu and shred £10,000 on the internet
He's
yesterday.
an idiot.
We don't know if it's really that. He was wearing the rainbow flag, the trans flag, and a very exciting dress, and he shredded all the money right there and then. David Beckham, for his part, says that he is hoping that holding the Football World Cup in Qatar, is kind of hard to say it with a straight face, but is going to be a platform for progress for Qatar as a nation. He says dreams do come true. That's why we're here. And we have...
Whose dreams? Qatar's dreams?
Indeed. And we share the passions for the game of football and for making the world a more tolerant and inclusive place. This is a dilemma, by the way, that's been posed to a lot of performers. So, this is a dilemma, obviously, that has been presented to a lot of high-profile people who normally the World Cup is like the Olympics. It's dripping with celebrities.
Is that when Ricky Martin did... Ole, 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 ole.
Yes,
no, what was the song that Ricky Martin did?
Oh, my goodness.
He did a song.
Yeah, he did a World Cup song once.
Probably wasn't that.
Anyway, Dua Lipa said she wouldn't go until human rights abuses were addressed because she was asked. Rod Stewart said he turned down £1 million to perform. Robbie Williams took the money. Robbie said, of course I don't condone any abuses of human rights. Anywhere he is performing there. But that being said, if we're not condoning human rights abuses anywhere, then it would be the shortest tour the world has ever known. I wouldn't even be able to perform in my own kitchen.
That's quite funny.
He said, anybody leaving any messages saying no to Qatar are doing so on Chinese technology. It would be hypocritical of me not to go to Qatar because of all the places that I do go to. And then last night, when the opening ceremony started, the BBC didn't even televise the opening ceremony, which is it's like the ABC in here, but that is a massive deal. The fact that the national broadcaster in Britain is not televising.
So is that because of public pressure that it's like the Melbourne Cup, right?
Yeah.
It's saying up to the Cup.
Yes, but on
saying
a very
up to the World Cup.
Big level. And so they are going to screen games. They're not doing that. And they have paid, like the BBC are on shaky ethical ground because they have paid for the rights, etc. But on the night when the opening ceremony was supposed to happen, that like all opening ceremonies is supposed to showcase the great nation that it's being held in. Instead, they ran a report about human rights abuses in Qatar. And then they went to the football. This is where we found ourselves. Jessie, I have a question to ask you because the Socceroos, Australia, is in the World Cup. We play our first game against France on Wednesday. Do we all need to boycott with our eyes?
No one's going to be boycotting with their eyes. That's not going to be taking place. It's really hard because a lot of sports fans and the ideology that's behind a lot of sport is that there is something apolitical about it. And obviously it has been something throughout history that has intersected with politics. But the idea that you can go and play a match against a team from a country that has very different politics to you and they're a different religion, they believe in different things, is a really powerful thing. And that's something that we want. But I don't think that anyone who loves soccer is going to not watch. And I kind of understand. I don't necessarily understand.
You're marrying one of those people.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly. Who loves it. And interestingly, looked into Qatar when he didn't know a lot of this. I think a lot of people don't really know Qatar. Looked into it and potentially going. And he was struck by the fact that there was no infrastructure. They've had to build an entire city, essentially.
It's hundreds of billions of dollars they had to spend on building 7 stadiums and basically everything because it's essentially a desert.
And the problem was, and this is when he looked at a year ago or so, there wasn't any accommodation. And the big thing about the World Cup is that you need to have affordable accommodation because this isn't an elite sport. It's for the average dude in Manchester who wants to go and watch his team play. You've got to have a hostel. And of course, they didn't have any. So they built accommodation in shipping containers that have no it just doesn't have any facilities. So
That'd
it's
be
Fire
hot.
Festival, and everyone arrived as well. And Budweiser is this big sponsor. And then the night before it started, Qatar, who's a Muslim country, they're a dry country, said no beer. And so
no, I was reading that no alcohol. They'd only announced when, like literally last night, after everyone had made their arrangements and arrived, you will not be able to buy alcohol in any of the stadiums or actually anywhere.
And again,
you
people
can-
are saying,
yeah.
you know, that's fair enough for that country to do that, but not 2 days before.
No,
it's
you've gotta
done.
let the
When
people know.
Budweiser have always been a sponsor of the World Cup.
I
for
found the
years.
song that Ricky.
oh, Jesus.
This
Wait.
seems important. Yeah.
There are just people around the world pulling their hair out and just going,
Yeah, but my problem with all of this is that why is it now the responsibility of Robbie Williams, you know,
David Beckham.
David Beckham, your fiance,
Yeah.
people who've, you know, who want to watch it on the television, the BBC, why is it the responsibility of everybody else to deprive themselves because FIFA
fucked up. Yeah.
Made a
fucked up
corrupt
and made a
decision.
terrible, corrupt, brainless decision. Obviously not brainless. There were very good financial reasons that it did it, but they sold everybody up the river.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think to be a sports fan, a major sports fan, you've always had to hold your nose about certain things, like match fixing, like, you know, and gambling in general around sport, for example, and, you know, and in Britain, hooliganism, and there's
Horse racing, like
Yeah,
dead
The
horses.
rise in domestic violence.
There's a lot of things around sport that, in a way, you kind of have to hold your nose around because and the massive amounts of money that change hands for the rights to view it. Like when I was a kid, I don't know, it makes me sound like a very old person. Football was on the telly, like on the free-to-air telly, every night of the week, you know, and that all shifted, and now it's pay-per-view. And so, I mean, I think sports fans have had to hold their nose about all kinds of things, and people will do it because they have very deep connections to sport in terms of community. And it's interesting because in Australia, soccer, the traditional fan base for soccer in Australia is mostly immigrants, right? Because it is people from Britain, of course, but it's also all kinds of European nations, all kinds of African nations who are obsessed with the world game, as it's called. And so it's like you can't watch the thing you love because you don't want to support.
Yeah,
the
and what
terrible
I've
stuff.
learned after being very critical publicly of sport over the years, what I've learned is that it brings people together in a way of this is why the whole gambling thing around sport is so toxic, because it knits people together socially. You know, going to the, you know, I've got friends, they all went to the cricket on the weekend, and you know, people all sit around and watch the soccer together, and you all are joined in a community of
Caring
people.
about something bigger than you.
Yeah.
And isn't David Beckham allowed to be a man who loves to kick a football?
And
And-
earn 200
And
million
earn
pounds
200
doing
million
it.
pounds doing it.
I think
But
this comedian sounds like a dick. I'm sorry. Like, what's he? You know, he should have just said, either way, I'm donating it. You know, like,
yeah.
what's David Beckham gonna do? Say, oh no, I won't go, so that you give that. Like,
I just think that you're allowed to, if you're David Beckham, and this isn't necessarily what he said, but put your hand up and go, I'm not an expert in Qatar's human rights abuses. And this is really, really complicated, because guess who else has human rights abuses? Australia does. Like,
yes,
I know, but I don't know. David Beckham doesn't need an extra 10 million pounds. And he's got a very good guy image and a very everyman image, and everybody loves him for that. And I think this is a bit odd.
but no one can criticize FIFA. Not when you work for FIFA.